Hey Don, how did you get started in music?
Wow, that's a interesting question. Actually, I started. I was 8 years old, and one day I was on a Saturday afternoon. I was laying there, and my mom came running in. She said, "Get ready for your first drum lesson." And, I'm like, "What?" She said, "Yeah, you're going to your first drum lesson." And come to find out, she had seen a guy in high school do a drum solo, and she was really inspired by this kid. And she had vowed that if she ever had a son, that he was going to play drums. So it was really my mom's idea, and I really thank her for it. So. 8 years old, and I started, and I took 12 years straight of private lessons. Started at my first year with Jim Friels, a local drummer, and then from Pat Moore for 7 years, and then great jazz drummer, great theory, great teacher, and then Bruce Langford. He was the great band director in this area in the 70s and 80s, great jazz drummer and percussionist, and then. David Gross, who was then with the Kansas City Philharmonic, has spent a year really learning porgy and bass on xylophone, and then a few years back from great local legend Mickey Grimm, who's a world touring artist and a dear old friend, taught me a lot on technique and really hammered home some French grip ideas, and so that was basically it. Mom, and then I was fortunate to really run into a great group of kids. We all grouped together, took from Pat or Bruce, like Jim Perkins and Mickey Grimm and Glenn Gore from this area, and Chet Harger and Dave Dick, Jim Galster, Verdelsky Miller, who runs the Boom Squad here in Evansville. So I was just saturated with a lot of great talent, and I just owe a lot to them.
So who are your influences?
Wow, I'd say my teachers and my friends first and foremost. But guys like Buddy Rich, I grew up playing jazz probably for the first 6 years. So, he was everyone's, idol, still is. Back then though, Neil Peart of Rush, really hammered home single stroke stuff. I was really into Steve Gadd of Steely Dan, a good pocket drummer, very good jazz improv. I loved Alphonse Mouzon, Billy Cobham, and drummer for Def Leppard, his simplicity. Basically those guys kind of in a melting pot. So I'm basically a jazz drummer who became a rock drummer, and I've played country and symphonic music and a whole slew of it, which I guess ultimately becomes my own personal style.
So where do you see music headed?
Well, I hope it's just non-stop. I mean, I love old music, from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, but I just love the new stuff as well. I mean, there's so much energy. Double bass has really picked up the intensity, and historically, music kind of goes. One of my next shows is I've been doing a lot of study and research on the history of music, and music seems to go in periods of complexity to simple, back to complex and simple, and many times is an expression of things that are going on economically and around the country and society, meaning that when during tough times, music seems to get more complex. People are a little more stressed, and during good times, music seems to be simplified a little bit. And you can see in the last 10 years, the bass drum has really came into its own, and it's powerful and energetic, and that I think is somewhat due to what's going on around the country, somewhat despair, but just a lot of energy.
What do you think about the talent here locally?
It's amazing. I think we have probably 50 of some of the best musicians in the country, if not the world. This place is probably one of the biggest untapped markets. When I was talking about Mickey Grimm and Jim Perkins and Chet Harger, Brian Mullins of Well Low, and so many, one of my former students, Chad Marshall of Jeb. These guys are amazing talent, amazing, and I mean that. They could play with any band anywhere. It's just this local market is pretty small. So anything that we can do, to highlight and spotlight them, will be certainly beneficial to the whole community. More people need to see them, hear them. That's my claim to fame, is that I've just been fortunate enough to be around some really great talent, and it's really my mission to bring attention to a lot of these great players. Not just drummers, but musicians in general. I mean, Kenny Brinkley's and Jim Brinkley's in the area, and Tommy Stillwell's, and Jim Cawley's great drummer. Just amazing talent. So Lindsey Williams, a lot of people know all these guys. So we just want to bring more attention to all these great talent.
What about the idea for your new book, The Circle of Drums? What was your idea on that?
The original idea for the book I started playing live professionally at 14 with the Ohio Valley String Band, and they gave me a copy of 40 songs and said, "Kid, be ready to play these in 2 weeks and be ready to play a drum solo." So up to that point, I'd been playing drums for about 6 years and gone through quite a few of the books that are out there, but it was still pretty challenging and intimidating. So what I did was, for 1 week, I just listened to the 40 songs, and I started hearing similar beats and similar songs. And that was when I first realized that, wow, there weren't a million different beats. There's only about, with those 40 songs, there was really only 6 beats, okay? And then there was maybe 2 or 3 other songs that had some different beats. But that was the first time I really understood, how common these beats were. And that was also the first time that I really understood or was made aware of what beat spices were. They're not labeled in any book anywhere, and most people play them and whatnot. But I started hearing a 2-measure sequence, specifically back in the 70s in R&B. So a lot of drummers back then were very interesting, taking a rhythm instrument and really making it sound like a melodic instrument. So it started then with the idea of the 8-measure drill. That was another thing. One of the big drum drills back then were 3-and-1s, 2-and-2s, ways to practice. But what I was hearing in songs were standard 7-and-1, meaning playing 7 measures of a beat, and then a fill in the 8th measure. So immediately I went, wow, there's chord beats. All you need to really do is know the riff beat of the song, and then improv to it in 8-measure sequences. And then at the same time, I'd gone through a bunch of snare drum books and had played all the notes and fill spices, as I call them, articulations, ghost notes, as they're more formally called, flams, roughs, buzz rows. And I saw Keith Moon of The Who doing a solo. He's doing a build-up to a solo. He started doing quarter notes with both feet and blah, 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 and going at it. And I realized that what he was really doing was playing a snare drum book with both feet. And it was common back then for all of us, and to this day, for people to utilize metronomes when they're practicing. But I saw the benefit of really using the feet because it really accentuated that basic pulse. As opposed to just hearing a metronome, it's easy to overlook it when it's not that involved into what you're doing. So I realized that it was a great way to summarize all the snare drum books that I'd gone through to use quarter notes with both feet and to be able to sit there and solo on a snare drum first and then to the tom. So it became the build-up, the climax to a drum solo. And I realized when you learned beats and then understood how to take a snare drum passages and use quarter notes with the feet, that became the build-up to your solo. So.
Okay, thank you.